Has anyone ever told you a story like this thing happened to this guy and you realize the story was about you? What's the story? When I was like 6, my mom and I lived for about 6 months in Florida before moving away to a different state. I played soccer and went to school, but I was out frequently for being sick. My mom had much Orson's by proxy and was poisoning me. A few times I had to leave soccer games for throwing up on the field. Fast forward 6 years and I'm back in Florida when custody is given to my dad 2 years prior, and I'm in middle school with a bunch of kids I played soccer with. I wore my soccer jersey one day and all of a sudden a lot of these kids I don't quite remember are super mad at me, giving me dirty looks and saying not cool man. Apparently they thought I died and didn't put it together that it was my jersey, and I was that kid. I didn't understand till this girl Brooke sat me down and told me the story of me. How I was the best goalie, PFFT no, and heroically played though I was sick and disappeared mid-game one day and never returned, and coach broke the news I went to the hospital and wasn't going to play again, and the kids thought that meant I died. They retired my number even when the kids made a fuss to their parents. They were super happy I was alive. I hope you're okay now. What a horrible thing to do to your kid. I hope your dad was a much better parent. I was super accident prone as a child. This led to an interesting trip to the air. My sister was chasing me around the backyard with a little plastic shovel and I was fleeing for my life. I fled to the side yard and dove into some tall grass. Turned out there was a huge pile of redwood planks obscured by the grass. I dove in and came to an abrupt halt. I had managed to impale a roughly foot-long redwood splinter. Thing was about as thick as a pencil, right in between my left ring and middle finger, right through the webbing and all the way down to the wrist. I end up in the air, and I had this very attractive red-headed nurse that kept my attention even as a 9-year-old. I sat quietly while she slowly removed the whole twig from between my fingers. Fast forward 2 months. I am camping with my grandparents and my grandpa is teaching me how to fish. I was using one of those little 3-pronged barbed lures, and when I cast it I noticed nothing hit the water, so I start reeling back my line and lure until it stops and my arm starts hurting. Oh well, certainly that is a coincidence. So I can't seem to reel my lure all the way back to me and I am tugging and reeling and my arm is hurting more and more until my grandpa noticed that I hooked my upper right arm and had successfully dug the barbed lure all the way into my arm. My grandpa, being the resourceful one, decided he can yank it out with pliers. So he grabs a pair. This pair must have been the original pair. They were huge and probably a good 73% solid rust. Several fruitless attempts later I am sat in the passenger seat of his truck being taken to the air. I get in there and I am wailing, and the universe decides to hate me today. We end up at the same that I went to for my twig removal. My male nurse is wearing scrubs with a fishing lure pattern printed all over it. And lastly, when they get me into the room, Mr. Fishhook Shirt has the audacity to tell me I shouldn't be crying, that it's not that bad. That some poor kid was in here just a few months ago with a huge stick stuck in his left hand right between his fingers. I lose it. I start bawling and blubbered out of that. That was me. The nurse looks up at my grandpa and my grandpa just nods a silent yup to the nurse. That was fun. I met a girl in college who started telling me about her brother's friend who had the same first name as me. Proceeded to tell me my life story. Drug addiction, abusive relationship, abortion. But apparently her brother heard that I got killed. Proceeded to tell me my life story. Drug addiction, abusing relationship, abortion. But apparently her brother heard that I got killed. I really want to believe that when she got to that part of the story, you just looked her in the eye and said, no, I didn't die. When I was a kid, I used to impersonate The Rock a lot because he was my favorite. This led the school to ban wrestling themed stuff. Now, almost 20 years later, my friend's kid goes to the same school and can't wear a John Cena shirt to school because they still have the rule. Crazy crap, man. I came up with a website. We had a launch, received some decent praise locally. Real jobs got in the way, so I'll let the project die. A couple of years down the road I mentioned to a coworker about creating a site. He responds, don't bother, there is already a site that does it, and he mentions the site I had created. Someone once told me about a friend of a friend who got mugged downtown and pee her pants from fright. That pants pisser was me. Phew. I thought you were gonna say you were the mugger, lol. I have a screen accurate Ghostbusters costume and I've been with a local group of GB costumers for over a decade doing stuff for charity and to make our city more weird. Everyone who knows me knows about the GB thing. A few years back some people I went to high school with walked into one of my GB friend's apartment and saw his proton pack hanging on the wall. They were like, oh, we went to school with a guy who dressed as a Ghostbuster. You guys would get along. Then the HS friends got a closer look at a picture of me and my buddy with Dan Aykroyd and realized we'd already been suiting up together for years. I made an account just to post this. Last night I was out at my favorite bar with some friends and spilled my, thankfully, almost empty beer over and splashed the guy next to me. I apologized profusely and bought him a drink. He said it's okay. A few months ago a girl tripped with a full drink and covered my buddy with Jajamester, so it could be a lot worse. I started laughing and asked if it was other random bar, and he gave me a weird look and slowly said, yes, yup, me both times. He changed seats after that, saying he was getting out of the danger zone. I didn't blame him. Danger zone. This friend I had in high school had a stepmom who was a runner. IDK if she still runs or not, but she ran a lot back then. She would often run along the trail by the local creek. One day she's telling me about how she saw these people having sex in a field on her run, and how trashy it is all out in public like that and what is the place coming to. I still don't know if she knew it was me or not and was trying to say something indirectly, but at the time I could only stammer in agreement and hope she couldn't tell from my face how embarrassed I was. Oh, she was fishing for sure, haha. Everyone in my 6th grade class had to go to our outdoor nature center for a 3-day camp. They have been doing it for 20 plus years. The goal was to learn about the environment, team building, etc. Well, on my last night at camp, 12-year-old me rolled off the top bunk in my sleep and cracked my head against the concrete floor. A concussion, skull fracture, and brain bleed. Later I woke up in the ICU. Long story short, after a duration in the hospital I made a full recovery. Flash forward to high school and they're asking for counselor volunteers for 6th grade camp. Wanting to prove to myself that I could make it through a camp meant for 12-year-olds. I signed up. During the orientation training they started talking about bedtime rules. Sure enough, they start telling a story about a kid who fell off the top bunk and was badly injured. Only I knew it was me. When I was in college, going into sophomore year, 3 friends from the dorms and I decided to get an apartment together. We lived together over the summer before moving into a different apartment in the fall. There was one girl who never paid rent, was a complete slob, ate all our food, just was awful. The worst incident came when I came home late one night and she was sleeping in my bed and peed in it on purpose when I asked her to leave, right in front of me. When we tried to have discussions with her about the mess and the money, she would flat out deny everything or just literally put her hands over her ears and say la la la. Anyway, after the bed peeing incident, we replaced her on the lease for the fall. It was over a month beforehand so she still could sign up for the dorms or find another apartment. So by crazy coincidence, I was at a random party in another state 3 years later, right after graduation. I was talking to this girl who said, oh, you went to university, and started to tell me this story of her childhood friend who went there who had a terrible apartment story. In this story, 3 mean girls played an elaborate prank on this girl, tricking her into living with them, then throwing her out to literally live on the streets. They stole her books and all sorts of crap. So I was like, oh, that is really mean. Then she said, oh, here she is now, and lo and behold, it was my former roommate. Please tell me you told the real story. I once tried to flirt with a guy in college and knew the guy loved Star Wars. Said something along the lines of, why don't we watch all the Star Wars movies together and then not actually watch them. Needless to say, he was not into it, but I remained friends with the guy and we had overlapping friend groups and hung out often. Throughout the years he suffered a few concussions due to rugby, and as a result, he often confused events and overall had a bad memory. We were out at a bar with all his friends and he starts casually talking about some desperate girl who tried to get him to come over by using Star Wars as an excuse to bang. All his friends died with laughter. I sat there, red as a tomato, completely mortified and not saying a word. Screw that. My Star Wars loving boyfriend really wanted me to watch the original trilogy upon finding out I never really watched them. We ended up watching them but not actually watching them. I spent 3 months in the hospital before giving birth due to my water breaking at 21.3 weeks. On Valentine's Day of all days. It was just like the movies, except there was multiple puddles of fluid on the floor. So I go for a scan with the same lady about 2 months later. I had lots of scans between then, just with different techs. They wanted to check fluid levels in the baby's growth. The tech asks why I was there and I told her my water broke early and I was in the hospital or something like that. She then tells me, well, at least it's not as bad as this girl whose water broke on Valentine's Day. I came in the room and they had thrown down bed pads on the floor to soak up the fluid. I almost stepped in a puddle. I looked at her and said, yeah, that was me. She goes, you're still pregnant? Oh yeah. I laughed though. When I was in year 8 I broke my arm very badly in playing bench ball. Like snapped in half, requiring 2 surgeries and over a year of physiotherapy. Bad. Fast forward to in year 11 and walking back into the same gym. A girl that I hadn't really started talking to until about a year earlier mentioned, did you know I heard a girl's arm snapped off in here? When I questioned her about it, she recited all the details of how it happened, apart from my arm falling off. But I'll leave that to the effect of Chinese whispers changing the story a little, all the while not knowing she was talking about me. When I was very new in service, my helmet got stolen when I piled into a fight on a busy nighttime economy patrol in the city. It came off when I ran in and someone picked it up and cycled off with it. One of the older officers told me that I needed to record a crime for the theft and inform the inspector personally. Of course, that was rubbish, and I didn't need to inform anyone aside of recording the incident. Years later, I was listening to 2 officers talk about that rookie who got his helmet nicked in a fight, only the story had been so embellished that I supposedly hand-wrote the crime report and delivered it personally to the chief constable. I didn't want to spoil my legacy, so I didn't say anything. When I worked at GameStop, I was told there had been a plan by some kids to tie me up, beat and rob the place when I took out the trash one night. But my boss wouldn't let me leave for vacation tomorrow without cleaning the store. So instead of taking the trash out at 9, I got around to it at 11. In that time, one of the other stores noticed the people waiting by the trash, called the cops, they were arrested, and I didn't know at all. Flash forward about a month later, I moved, got promoted and was on my first manager's call. It was revealed that a new rule was put in place, and if you were closing the store alone, you couldn't take out the trash. You had to leave it by the door for the morning. Then the story was relayed as to why this change is happening. No one knew it was me. When I was in middle school, my family went on vacation. We left our dog at home and asked the son of a family friend to take care of her for the 2 weeks we were gone. This boy was about a year older than me and was dreamy, at least to my 7th grade eyes. I still consider him my first official crush. Well, about a week into our vacation, my dad gets a call. Our dog has been hit by a car and has passed away. Tears all around. About a year later, I am hanging out with some girls from my class when one of them starts laughing and telling this story about how one time she went on a date with a boy and they walked this dog he was taking care of. They weren't supposed to take her downtown, but they wanted ice cream. They got so distracted making out that they didn't even notice when she ran out into the street and got hit by a car. Who was she on the date with? My crush. And my dead dog. I've never told my family. When I took the SATs, they had us write that whole honesty sentence in cursive for some bizarre reason, as if that makes it somehow more legitimate than actual handwriting. I hadn't written a word in cursive in like 9 years, and couldn't remember how to write some of the wackier letters. It took me several minutes longer than anyone else to write that entire stupid sentence. Later, one of my friends mentioned how one of his buddies had to take the SATs with this stupid kid who took forever to write a cursive sentence. It feels Spedman JPEG. For security purposes, please type your password in again. Thank you, College Board. You really stopped all the imposters with bad short-term memory with your engineers type the same password twice to login scheme. I went to a girls' camp every summer from 5th grade through high school. The summer after my freshman year of college, I got to ride with my aunt to go pick up my little cousin from the same camp. As we drove home, she was telling us all about camp and all the fun, wild things she did and stories she heard. One of those stories she heard was about a crazy cool girl that dyed her hair green before the dance with the boys camp. My aunt started laughing her butt off. She knew the story. Because it was me, I was kind of proud of that. You should be hella proud of that. I can finally contribute a story. In 2013 I went to a cosmetology school and they supplied us with all kind of cool gadgets. One of which was a very small texturing iron. I loved it and would give myself very curly hair, kind of borderline Shirley Temple, but imagine tighter smaller curls. So anyway, I loved the look so much that I decided I wanted a perm. We had been learning the process and I volunteered to be a model for the class. I asked my teacher to use the second smallest rollers in my hair. I had a bob cut. Everyone asked me if I was sure I wanted to do this. So I'm sitting there, barbecue sauce on my titties, joking, with a giant butt smile on my face, all excited for the results. They wash my hair, pat it dry, jerry curl, no big deal, I'll style it at home, it'll be fine. Ha. Right Giz? I go home. It's terrible. I look like Krusty the fricking clown. I ask myself in the mirror why I did this. Cry and do what I'm not supposed to do, wash my hair. Elle Woods is grilling me on the stand. It's the weekend and I can fix this. So I go to Sally's, buy myself a perm kit and brush perm through my hair the next day. I processed the frick out of my hair and ended up getting a pixie cut and growing it out. My instructor was not happy. Everyone laughed. I died inside. Years later, I meet someone that is attending the same cosmetology school I went to and happens to have the same instructor I did. And apparently she tells the story every year. I bet there could be an entire subreddit on hair disasters. Kind of. When I was younger I had a part-time job in a DIY store. There was this guy who I worked with, roughly the same age as me but crazy and could beat the crap out of me quite easily, but we got on well. He starts telling me that some guy has been seeing his girlfriend and one of his friends seen them making out at a local club. I don't think too much of it and simply say that you should find the dickhead and beat the crap out of him. Fast forward 2 weeks, I'm out with my friends and I bump into my work colleague. He's with his girlfriend and well, you've guessed it. His girl is a chick I was kissing in this club a few weeks ago. She doesn't acknowledge me as I think she's too shocked that I know her man. I sure as heck don't let on that I know her to my colleague as I like my body intact. We do the usual hey, where you going etc and I get away from them. For the next few weeks at work I was crapping myself thinking the next time my colleague and his girl have an argument, she'll spill the beans and I'll get murdered. When I was 25, I was run over by a Chevy S10 while at home to see my family. Obviously, I was super out of it. I hadn't even realized that the news crews had shown up until years later. While I was back home for another visit, I was out at a bar with a group of people and we were talking about some gory story on the news. This guy starts talking about a story he saw a while back involving a girl who got clobbered by a truck. Then he went on to elaborate about how bloody the scene was and how he never heard what happened to that girl on the news. I bet she's dead, he stated, with the saddest look about him. I pulled up my pant leg, showing him this dent I have from the bumper, and replied I heard she survived, but ended up with some pretty gnarly injuries. One time a friend of mine described a good memory with his current girlfriend about how they had gone to a film festival a few months before, then out dancing afterwards, and about how it was such a great time. But I had gone there with him, not her colon. Additionally, the details were so specific that like I'm sure it wasn't just some other film festival. I had a good friend in high school who started to recount all the great memories she had with her best friend. Only all the memories she recounted were with me. This was a little after high school. I had made a friend with this guy I played board games with, then I ended up needing a new roommate and he moved it with me. He ended up meeting this girl I went to high school with and they started dating. She was telling him a story about this guy who would bring a giant suitcase to parties full of liquor to parties and some of the crazy crap that would happen. He ended up telling me that story and I was like, yeah, I know this. It was me. He called bulls on me. I told him to ask her for the name of the guy and sure enough she stated my name. Still makes me laugh about how in high school I was known as the suitcase liquor guy. That's a respectable reputation. I was attacked and beaten by a drunkard on a train. The guy who attacked me was dragged out of the train by station police. This was in Eastern Europe while I was backpacking around. A bit later, after I got out of the hospital and resumed my trip, I was on a train talking to other backpackers. They had seen the man being pulled out of the train, doused with fire hoses and subdued by a pile of law enforcement and military, but they didn't know that he had totally deserved it, and I didn't know about the fire hose. At my university there has recently been a legend about the satanic cult that sat around a cobblestone brick circle at the beginning of the year chanting things and being weird. Someone I had just met was telling me about them, and after a brief pause at the end of the story, I announced, yeah, that was me. What actually happened was that all of the new freshmen, myself included, were trying to settle in and meet people, so we were playing dumb games like Two Truths and a Lie, and sitting in a circle, when some random group of people walking by scoffed and condescendingly asked us what we were doing. My now ex-GF would jump up in the middle of the circle and very sarcastically announce that it was a satanic cult. Apparently they didn't pick up on the sarcasm, and we became a legend in the other dorms. I've always thought that most of those stories of, oh, there's devil worshippers that hang out there are just a bunch of kids who are doing stuff like that. My group of friends probably inspired a story or two like that accidentally. LOL. The college I went to had a file sharing program accessible by all the students that was mostly used to share pirated music and video files. Loads of the files were mislabeled. My friend used the username Optimus P and made it his hobby to relabel the P files to accurately describe what they contained. One day in lecture he heard some guys in the row in front him talking about how awesome the user Optimus P is and how he is their hero. He didn't say anything to them, but it was a very proud moment for him. I was at the baby weighing clinic one time and got talking to a new mum. She started telling me a story about a mum who locked her baby in the car outside of a local nursery and had to have the police come and break the window to get the baby out. She had heard about it at the breastfeeding cafe. It was me, from the week before, being used as a cautionary tale. Or, as if you weren't humiliated enough, well, you definitely won't be doing that again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.